Right, it being a little after 9 o'clock, we'll bring the Facilities and Property Management Committee to order. Starting with the approval of minutes of the August 23rd, 2023 Facility and Property Management Committee. Is there a motion to approve? Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Moving on to correspondence shared by committee members.
I don't know if this is the time or not, but I have a problem, and Mike, maybe you can answer this. You voted 5-0 on naming that Sue Ertmer room. And then I was told it couldn't be brought forward at this last meeting.
My impression when we left the meeting was I was supposed to bring a resolution back to you guys to approve. And that's what we've got now.
But we've even got it in the minutes where we voted 5-0 to go ahead and do it.
And talking with Mary Ann and everything, because you didn't have a resolution to vote on, we had to come back with it.
So my question is, from now on, just so our chairman and everything realizes, everything you do is no good if we vote on something here unless you have a resolution in front of us.
If it requires a resolution, correct.
Well, everything's gotta require a resolution, not according to them. So we voted 5-0 on that. I know, but I wanna make sure
Yeah.
because, you know, I go ahead and then I sit there at, with Mary Ann and say, well, I was voted 5-0. I said, I know, I said, I made the motion. You know, she said, no, it can't be. And Mike said it wasn't. I said,
Well, I said they voted 5. I said you approved it, but we did not have a resolution for you to approve.
So then everything's gotta be on a resolution in order for us to approve.
Yeah.
So
And
whatever we do at a meeting, unless it has a resolution, not gonna do any good.
that's my impression now, yeah.
So who makes it? Mary Ann or?
I think Mary Ann made
someone
that.
else?
Mary Ann made that call.
Is that something that, I mean, obviously this has not been happening like this for a while. I guess this will be a question for her to say what made this change. Obviously, from here, go to the full county board with the resolution. And you know, I agree with Tom. We talked about it, discussed it. You know, we've been beating this up for a while, and so
I think
it's a
it's
question for her.
I think they want to just make sure that they have the resolutions before you all. So nothing shows up in a resolution when it goes to the county board that is not what you had discussed or basically approved for.
And I don't wanna put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but is this coming out of Mary Ann's office or is this coming higher up and they're saying this is what we,
I don't know.
want to see it before it goes to the county board?
I don't know.
I think you do, Mike.
No, I honestly don't know, because I was working with Mary Ann. And she asked a question, and I said it got approved. But there was no resolution for them to approve, and it came back, we gotta have a resolution before we do it. So if she's getting direction from up above, I can't say yes or no.
All right. That's all I have, just so you realize that
Yeah,
everything
no.
from now on, you gotta have a resolution for us. to even
Yeah,
approve.
well,
So
and that's news for me too. Because I know in the past, we've done the resolution after the fact. And now I know I have to have a draft resolution to Mary Ann for her to finalize, so I can get it for you guys to vote on. To carry forward to the county board.
Cause this was even like this agenda item report. We never used to have this, and all of a sudden you're having it now.
Yeah, now that one, I can say came from John.
Right.
And he wants to make sure that everybody has information that they can look at and read before the meetings, so that they come into the meetings a little bit more knowledgeable about what is going to be discussed. And hopefully, if they have questions, they can get back to the department heads to ask a question before it's all laid out and making meetings long at the county board.
There seems to be a lot of new, and not just here,
Yeah.
a lot of new stuff going on, in which this is, you know, these committees seem to be losing more and more power all the time. It seems like whatever we do has to take another step and then come back to us, and so we lose another month, but everything else, and it just, because then it goes to you, and then it's, said, I was talking about, well, why isn't this on there? And she said, well, Mike said it wasn't approved. I said, well, I know it was approved. So anyways, going back and forth. So now it's gotta come back in. We gotta go ahead, then we gotta go ahead and get it on the board again. And so,
The resolution wasn't approved.
Well, I guess I would like to, maybe this will be a question for a different committee, but like to see where, that's written and saying, this is the way it has to be done, not just, I want it done like this change happened because we missed this statute or whatever it may be, so. I just have, Tom, are you good?
no, well, I don't know if I'm good, but that's all I had to
All right.
ask.
And I just will add that, Michael asked to be excused today, he's, has a doctor's appointment. Anybody else have anything? Moving on to
Wait,
public,
Steve Binder is asking.
public input on agenda items.
Hi, Steve Binder, District 13.
Steve, can you hear us? You can talk and it shows you're unmuted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Some reason I'm unmuted on my end, but it must not be working. That's fine. I'll just talk to Andy Buck, Supervisor Buck at the next meeting.
Bluetooth. Digital audio in.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it wouldn't work. I'm unmuted.
He should be speaking.
Now does it work?
Is he muted on his end?
No, it doesn't show he's muted. Oh, wait. My
Unmute
speaker
your
is-
speaker. Yeah,
There
there
we
we go.
Now you got it?
Yeah.
Sorry, we missed everything.
Can start over.
Steve Binder, District 13. I just wanted to comment that, like we're gonna name that courthouse or that administrator room, the sewer room. There's a guy at the highway department that worked there for 33 years and his dad worked there for like 30 some years. And we never name anything after a regular employee. And I think that's sad that somebody that works for us for 43 years, we can't even recognize a conference room for him. The highway department has 2 conference rooms, and I don't see why we couldn't move one of those to the John Schneider conference room. The man gave 43 and a half years of his life for this county and did numerous things to benefit training employees and there for every snowstorm, how many people he helped get to work. Whatever the procedure is to move this forward, if Supervisor Buck could get it to me, I would be more than happy to move that forward. If it's a resolution, if it just goes through your committee, whatever needs to be done. I just think that we always recognize the elected officials. It's time that we take employees that work hard for this county and give them some recognition too. That's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Bender. All right, see no other public. Mike, nothing else on Zoom?
No.
Then moving on to agenda item number 4, discussion and approval of naming room 120 in the David Albrecht Administration Building for Sue Ertmer. Yep, was there a motion to approve?
Well, my thing is here, we have a resolution, but there is no number for the resolution, so can we just say resolution, name it? There's no number on there.
Apparently, because I just noticed that there's no resolution that I got for the USDA lease either.
Oh, no,
I'll go ahead and make a motion to name conference room 120 in the David Albrecht Administration Building to the Susan T. Ertmer conference room.
I'll second that.
a motion's been made and seconded to name the conference room 120 in the David Albrecht Administration Building to the Susan T. Ertmer Conference Room. Any other discussion?
Probably to make it correct, I probably should say the David W. Albrecht Building. Make everything correct so we don't have to come back again.
good with the minutes, got that David W. Albrecht Administration Building and the Susan T. Ertmer Conference Room. Any other discussion?
Unless Mr. Dean will have something.
Hearing none in this room, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 4-0. Okay, moving on to the discussion and approval of a 10-year lease with the USDA at the James P. Coughlin Center. Mike, does Tom have a?
Yeah, Tom has a new resolution which was brought to my attention, and it doesn't have a resolution number on it. And maybe they don't have a resolution number on it until they have their agenda prep meeting and know what the order of the resolutions are gonna be. But this is the culmination of, I think, 18 months worth of working with the USDA to get all the paperwork done in process and the manner that they want. We do have a firm bid to do the remodeling. And that came in less than the last time. So this capital project should come in under budget. But we've negotiated out that we will get the construction costs in the first year's rent. So the first year's rent will be $196,000. And then every year thereafter for 10 years will be $70,000, $70,783.20, which is a dollar amount that I averaged out a 5% inflation rate over the next 10 years. So basically the first 5 years, we should be recouping a lot more money than we expend on it. And then the final 5 years, it'll average out so that we recover all of our costs for it. The rental cost does include our maintenance, our yearly maintenance, and any future capital type expenses, and some management fees for us to manage the lease. So it basically doubles what we've been getting for the last 25 years from the USDA. They have promised that the first 3 years, they will not vacate the building, but after the first 3 years, they could potentially move out if it was needed.
Yes, Tom.
Nothing on this, but I just want to bring it forward. I don't know how anyone voted at the last thing. I know it ended up 17-17, but say like if it would have passed, the supervisor Hanson brought through, you couldn't bring in the piece of paper that voted on. It had to be put out ahead of time. There would have been no additional paper brought in unless everyone would get to see it. So just because it would probably come up again. So I'm not saying anything wrong on yours, but just so everyone knows that that's so.
One thing with this was they finally agreed to all my paperwork and everything was set. Like the day before I had to get your agenda out. So actually, I think I had sent an agenda to Andy to approve that didn't have this lease on it.
Yep.
And then later that day or the first thing the next morning, they came back and said, everything is all set. Can you sign the lease today? And I said, no. So.
Yeah, I have no problem. I'm just saying that these are things that come up that, you know. I guess I'm looking more as a board chair now than I am any other on these little things here that just seem to be popping up more and more and sort of.
Well, I would tend to agree with you on that, you know, especially timely manners, right? And you gotta sign a lease, you have to lock in this bid, and then now we don't have this in front of us, so we can't vote on it, and then 1 month turns into 3 months, and then they don't hold that price, and so I think that's a very valid point to bring up. I think Supervisor Eisen did bring up something similar at the board meeting, but thank you for bringing that up.
What did you say you worked out over 5 years?
I used a 5% inflation rate. And I inflated the rent 5% every year for 10 years. And then took the average of it and said that's $70,000.
I mean, typically like nonprofits, governmental agencies have to do a study of, fair market value for 800 square feet or whatever that, I mean, is there some kind of formula that you use?
They have,
They have something figured out for that, I would.
they have a nice little form that you have to fill out
There you go.
that takes into account, they ask for what all of it is.
Mhm.
They ask for like, your maintenance cost, your utility cost, management cost for the rent. And, how much, like in this, I took the replacement value of the building and averaged that out over 10, 20 years, I think it was, and put that in as a shell cost. So they have a form that you fill it all out, and basically it gives them what they would consider is the fair market value for it. Which is more, because we had been renting it to them for the last 25 years at $12 a square foot. So this comes out to $43 a square foot.
How many square feet is?
Which do you want? Because I'm not into leases, and we have the ANSI BOMA square foot area of 3,660 square feet, or we have the rentable square feet area of 4,520 square feet. I don't know what the difference is, other than they kind of explained to me, one takes into account the thickness of the walls and one doesn't.
What was the second one?
4,520.
Yeah, but what did you describe it as?
That's the rentable square foot.
I really get the most money out.
$43 a foot per hour.
For the Kaufman Center, yeah. And that is using their forms, they've got all sorts of forms,
Annual rent.
annual rent, yeah. I don't have all the forms here to do the backup for it, but there was a whole nother form that I had to put in all of our costs and everything, and then what we call the shell cost, which was the replacement value that I put over the life of the building. Maybe I used 50 years. And that gets added into the rent for capital improvements in the future. And it came out, we went from $12 a square foot to, I don't know if they're, well, let me see if I can figure it out.
So is that an annual reserve factor for capital improvements replacement then?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is a 10-year lease, correct?
Correct,
But the way I read it, this is only guaranteed for the first 3 years.
correct,
So in other words, they could say, forget it after the first 3 years.
correct. Which is why they agreed to and why I pushed for getting the remodeling costs in the first year. And I said, basically, we did not take out a loan for this. It's coming out of our operational budget. Basically, I have to balance the budget in a year.
Mhm.
So had we taken out a 10-year loan, then we'd have amortized it over 3 years. Because it's like, we're not going to lose money on doing the remodeling.
Did, that was the USDA telling you that, hey, we're only signing a 3-year lease? Did
Yes,
did they say that that's their policy or procedure to only sign a 3-year lease? I'm just kind of curious why they wouldn't sign up.
they're signing a 10-year lease, but
Uh-huh.
they're only guaranteeing the first 3 years.
We would like to do it.
That's why you need to get all that,
That's, yeah.
all
that's
that
why-
cost investment up front.
Right, right. So if, realistically, if they leave us after 3 years,
You got it.
because I've adjusted the rent for inflation, we're getting paid more in rent than what it really cost us to have them.
Right, we remodeled the building to their needs, and
Yeah.
who's saying if there's another,
$100 more.
right?
Okay, so that 43 is on the 196,760. $43 a foot.
No,
Is that on 70,000?
That's on the 70,000.
Okay.
Well. Motion to approve,
Yes. Motion to approve.
motion,
Agreement.
right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a 10-year lease with the USDA at the James P. Coughlin Center. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And actually, I want to talk to the boss and say, it would help if we had somebody on board that could negotiate leases. But then also maybe we use these, I think these, is this a GSA? Well, yeah, it's a GSA form. We use the GSA forms for figuring out what we should be charging for rent on some other properties. Because it was very inclusive on, like I said, you know, the shell costs, our maintenance costs, you know, management costs. You know, maybe if we would adopt something like that, it would help with rent on some other things. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but because, like I said, we went from $12 a square foot when we were just negotiating based on comparables in the town into at least $43 a square foot. And I don't know if the market would bear this, you know, federal government seems to be able to afford it more than, you know, anybody else we would rent to.
You're running out of room on that fourth floor, Mike.
Yes, we are.
All right, moving on to discussion and approval of acceptance of a fruit tree grant for UWO Fox Cities.
This got canceled at the last minute.
Okay.
Both myself and my counterpart from Allegheny County said, because we're part of it, the county's a part of it, you all just can't accept a grant. It needs to go before both of our respective parties. And that was Paul Farrell and myself sending information to Yvonne, I forget her last name right now, Monfields, separately. And then I also asked 3 big questions of the UWO, and Paul asked one too, was, you know, first off, is there any kind of county ordinance about having 25 fruit trees on a parcel? And I answered to them that no, it wasn't, but you know, that would be the city of Menasha would have to decide whether it qualifies as an orchard and it's urban farming and if it's within their zoning stuff. That's interesting. The other thing I said was, fruit trees take a lot of care and management. Who's going to do that, and do you have the staff to do it? Because I mean, fallen fruit draws bees, wasps, rodents. Somebody's got to keep up with it, and it's going to be a pain to mow the lawn. And then I said, looking up for the care and feeding of fruit trees, it's like cherry trees needed a pH of 6.5 and apple trees needed something below 5. And I said, you know, have you tested your soil to make sure that it will support the growth of the trees? And Vice Chancellor Rudd declined to put them at UW Fox. They're putting them at UWO and Fond du Lac. So
Okay.
if you hear anything about that, we asked some, I thought, you know, appropriate questions.
Yeah, I think that really were.
I mean, I've heard of this in different areas, but I think it's a great idea, but I mean, who's
Yeah.
gonna take care of it? Right? You get those
I
questions.
mean, you gotta spray pesticide or you're biting into an apple and finding half a worm.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta put nets over cherry trees or the birds take all the cherries. You know, and it was one of these things, we're trying to renegotiate the memo of understanding. And if you're gonna be pushing more costs onto the county because you wanna do something with fruit trees, and what are you gonna do with the fruit?
Who's gonna be picking the fruit? I mean, if you
Yeah.
had a partner and it was gonna be
What-
laid out.
So I know, Paul representing Allegheny County and me representing Winnebago County is just like, we don't need more costs added onto the county because you wanted to have fruit trees.
Got it.
So, it was pulled.
Okay. Thank you. All right, moving on to discussion and action on the facilities budget and the role of the facilities committee. I will say that I asked Mike to put this on the agenda, kind of off some of the discussion, at last week's, county board meeting. And just, want to have a discussion on this. I don't know if it's going to change anything. Seems to be that we're gonna have to have a resolution to change anything, so. I guess I'll just go first and say that. It didn't happen last year and, the year before. I believe that there's. To promote and foster transparency in the county that, I mean, nothing against you, Mike, but you have a dedication to. Your boss is a county executive and we have a different role in the committee as our dedication to the taxpayers and our constituents. And, I believe that, in the spirit of transparency that, us as a, committee and setting policy and, we have a different boss and, as the taxpayers and like I said, our constituents, so. I don't know if it's gonna make any difference or not, it says action on here, so I just am, yeah, I hope moving forward that some of those decisions will be reconsidered and, it just doesn't pass my smell test.
What I can tell you about the budget for the facilities department is, I developed a budget that was basically the same as last year. And the only thing that changed was inflation for, utilities and the wage rates. And basically the dollar amount that I submitted was roughly the same as the previous year with those two exceptions. I know it's gone into, review with the county executive and I don't have a final copy of what the facilities budget will be, but I should have it for you for next month.
Yeah, was it last year, or the year before that we made an amendment at the county board level to add a position? I mean, that was, I don't know. I mean, I think you said that was helpful, but I guess I just worry that the county executive is saying, hey, you need to be here. That's your boss and, you're beholden to your boss and say, well, okay, if you need me to be here, we're here. And you're saying, hey, maybe maybe if we had 2 more custodians, we didn't have to pay a outfit over here to do this work. Maybe we could save the taxpayers money over there. So I guess I just have a real fear of, the county executive running roughshod over a committee. And so that's all I have to say.
I think he got the message last Tuesday. I'll see what the final version of the budget the information I had given him rolls out into what we're allocated as a department. I do know there's a lot of things that would help the county if we could get this program-based budgeting up and running.
Priority based, you mean?
Well,
So it was.
the software that we've got is called program-based. It's basically, if you're in businesses, it's called activity-based costing. It could be priority-based budgeting. It's basically what it's doing is asking what it costs for us to do each little part of what we do. And I think that will help. I think it will also help, because we've got down a little bit further, we're going to talk about the building assessment. I think that will help us make some decisions on what we do with buildings. When you find out what programs are costing money and has little benefit, or how much it's costing us for a program for the benefit that we're getting, maybe we don't do that, and that will affect how much space we have in buildings, which then affects what buildings we have in our portfolio. So, I think, personally, I think it's a pretty important thing. It's something I've been doing with the department since I got here. we've been doing basically activity-based costing internally for the last 25 years. And now they're just trying to roll it out for the rest of the department. So I'll see how this all plays out.
Chairman,
Yeah, yes, sir.
don't you have any wish lists though that you think will be cut?
No. Because everything I've asked for is stuff that we have to do. You know, we have to maintain the buildings. There are things that I would like to have that I didn't even put in the budget. So,
What is something that would like that maybe we feel should be? I think that's what
Yeah.
Chairman is getting at.
I don't know yet, because I'm trying to digest what we got back with the facility condition assessment. Because I don't need more bodies if we find out that we've got some buildings, we should really reconsider what we do with them.
Mhm.
And, you know, I've mentioned, I think several times with the committee, I lived in Virginia Beach, they had a municipal center. We really should have a municipal center, because somebody that's coming from Rushford or Utica to drive all the way down to the Otter Street building and fight through the one-way streets in Oshkosh and parking and everything, to go to the treasurer's office or planning and zoning, it would be a whole lot easier if we could do it like out in the, I think Jackson is still 45 at that point. 45, 41 intersection, you're right there with 21, not too far away, you're not too far away on Highway 10. That's pretty well centrally located, and it's still within the city of Oshkosh, because Oshkosh is deemed the county seat, and we have to have the county board in the city of Oshkosh. Before we bought Otter Street, I had a plan to take Pleasant Acres at Parkview and basically gut it and turn it into the administration building. And that was, I don't want to use the word rejected, but overlooked in favor of buying the Otter Street building. So there's a lot of information that I've got, and like I said, I'm trying to digest it, because they gave me a report, but the report is really up at this level. And I've got a dashboard that I can look at that breaks it down to actual pieces of equipment in the buildings and tells me what priorities we should do to replace it. And I haven't been able to activate that tool yet this week. We just got that, I think either Friday night or Monday morning, to be able to start coming up with a plan to put into the capital projects into our normal budget for it. So when you ask about the wishes that I've got, I want to try and digest that before I wish for something that I really shouldn't have to worry about. If we take a look at what our results are. Because, well, I don't want to get into that, but you know, that's where, when you ask the question, do I have wishes? I don't know, you know, staffing. I would like to get more custodians. I think we have one last out vacancy for the custodians. And then we're fully staffed. But we're still at about half of what we should have for the number of square feet that we take care of. So
we added position, we added money to your budget.
Yeah.
That's something that you didn't ask for, that came to be by us asking questions.
Yeah.
And, you know, the county executive is telling you need to be here because I want to put another person on, and our job is to protect the taxpayers and this department and making sure that we're giving our folks the best services possible here. And, you know, I just gave an example of like the airport, and, you know, I still believe that's a county facility, and, you know, I don't know where that's at, but if we're paying a maintenance company to do that, and it should be our employees doing it because it saves the taxpayers money, that's the kind of stuff that we should be discussing and deliberating over here.
I will say there are internal challenges to what you just said. Not everybody's on the same playbook. And I will say, one thing with the county executive is he is really trying to break down silos between departments. But with any change, there is resistance. So, there's a lot on his plate. And, I think we're gonna get there, but to answer the general question that you've got, I don't feel comfortable asking you guys for anything more right now because of the changes that are going on. If, like Andy said, let's say they take and move maintenance from airport to us. Well, am I gonna get their people that do the maintenance? So if that's the case, then, we may not have a labor shortage. So I'm trying to wait and see how some things play out before I make some bigger requests.
Well, their plans are, it's you and highway. It isn't airport. How do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things I don't know, and because I don't know, I'm not real confident in asking for some things.
You say you can wait till next month, well, we'll be in budget
Yeah.
next month.
Yeah,
So that's all I have.
You're not real confident asking who,
the county board or the county executive for additional people or additional funding. I think when I can summarize what we have with the facilities condition assessment, what I can tell you right now is for the next few years, we're looking at $2 to $3 million a year for maintenance of the buildings, some capital replacements and normal maintenance stuff. And the reason I say that is because projects over like $100,000 go into the capital project, and projects under are in a normal operating budget. So, it's gonna play out someday, but where we've got is, like in 10 years, I think we're looking at some major expenses at Parkview and the jail are the two big ones. And that's because the study says that the boilers at the jail, the boilers at Parkview, the roof, those kind of things are big ticket items that they're going to be at the end of what they're considered their useful life. But if you take a look at it, the report also shows that the boilers at the courthouse are 31 years beyond their useful life. But we are now at the point with the boilers that we have to do something with it. So I've got a lot to digest before I feel comfortable asking for wish lists. I know the county executive has talked about moving us out by highways and trying to get it when we're going to take care of the mold and everything with the highways, but then they also have some shop improvements and everything else that they want to do down the road. And, expand it so they can drive through with their vehicles in the wash rack and things like that. So, at that time, it may be time for us to co-locate with them. So, yeah,
When you said move out there by them, I mean, this office would move out there?
yeah. And then we
This is
sell
what
it
I'm talking about. There's so many things behind the scene that's going on.
yeah,
And the board should be aware of this, and I'm not blaming you, Mike, but the board should be aware of this instead of everything on fourth floor being kept up secret. And this board, we have the purse strings, I realize,
yeah,
and he can go ahead and say, well, I'm not gonna say or I'm not. Well, so all of a sudden and I know you probably should have said it, but all of a sudden he's putting these together, and all of a sudden it seems funny that all of a sudden we're studying these committees that are gonna go together at the same time. So who's actually getting these together? I know, and it just gets frustrating afterwards because that's why I thought I was gonna be late today, because I had another board member that called that was really frustrated about something that was said over the radio and I don't care if he's listening, that he had said, and him and one of his cohorts had said that about the board. They have the final say, and that's the way it's gonna be, and so if that's the truth and it's gonna be, well, then they might as well get rid of the 36 of us and just
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, are we here just to say yes or no, or are we here to have input? Are we here to protect the taxpayers' interests too? Because that's what the board's there for. The checks and balances is why we have a board. Yeah, otherwise we just have an executive branch.
Mhm.
So, I really worry about the fact that we're moving away from transparency on this. And the public needs transparency too.
And that's what he ran on, was transparency.
Yeah, so, I wasn't gonna chime in on this, but we have to tread very carefully on this, I think. Um, and make sure that we don't neglect our constituents and the taxpayers, in this process.
Better quit behind my head.
Okay. Says action. I don't know if we need to take any action on this.
you're gonna see that on any one of your items, because over the 25 years, we've had just discussion on some things, and then somebody said, you wanted to make a decision, but because there was no action listed, then the public doesn't know that you might make a decision.
I'll just end with, or one of my last comments here. I mean, did somebody come to you and say, hey, how's the facilities committee doing? Do you think it's worth having a facilities committee? And do you think we should move this into the facility and highways committee? Did somebody ask your opinion on that and say, hey, we're gonna merge your committee into the highways committee?
Not in so many words. I did say that it would work better if we had all of the departments that deal with infrastructure.
Cake's been baked already.
That when it comes time for deciding on capital projects, it would work better if, like, highway projects, airport projects, our projects, all get looked at the same time. Because I don't want to throw airport under the bus, but is that hangar more important than a roof on a certain building? So it would work good, because, like, parks spent millions of dollars on the county park for lights and things like that. And, all of a sudden, the project gets approved, and then Rob Way comes to me saying, well, can you guys put the lights in, run the wiring and put the lights in? And it's like, no, that would take us 6 months with 2 guys to do it. So it would help for coordination, I think, with some of the big projects, that they get looked at more priority based rather than how they had been for the 20 years I've been here. And I think we're kind of moving towards that route, but I can't say for sure.
But we do have a meeting now early in the year where we're looking at the capital improvements projects altogether.
Yeah, but that's almost like too late, because basically they're in the capital program, but the decision, and they come forward separately. And, in previous years and everything, Mark Harris and Jane Bennett wanted to keep capital projects or bonding at $10 million. So when the capital projects hit $10 million, whether my roof was more important than putting lights in the county park, their project got in there, and it was supported by their committee, and it just got put in there. And I'm saying, maybe we need to have all of the infrastructure projects looked at and really have a discussion on what's more important. Do we protect what we have? And, and it's not anything against airport, parks, or any of the other departments about their wish list and trying to make their stuff more, I don't want to use the word enjoyable, but more beneficial for the public. But if we put in this thing that takes $1 million, and now a roof that I had planned on gets deferred for a year, that's really tough. It's tough for me as a department head to take. And I'd like to have some of those discussions before it comes to the county board in the capital project plan. Because once it's there, it's pretty much, we'll do this. And it's not opened up for a lot of discussion other than between you guys.
So I've got to ask you this, because this is personal, so now what you had said you'd like to have more discussion on this. Who are you gonna discuss it with?
Yeah, I think it should, because the county executive presents it to you as his budget, I think it should be back on our side. And I think it should be an argument between me and Adam Priest, or me and Bob Damel, or Jim Shell, and say, you know, we have all these projects that we have to do. And I think that's with my discussions with the county executive, we have a facilities condition assessment that has shown which buildings are worse.
Mhm.
And now, when I talk to them, we can say, okay, this building, here, for instance, one of the worst buildings we've got is hangar number 7. It used to be a flight school on the airport grounds. It now just houses one Cessna, they said. So the question is, did we just rent that building because it was empty, because somebody needed someplace to park their plane? And we're using it as a hangar, but it requires a significant investment in it. You know, well then, that should probably be torn down. It should be used just as a hangar. You know, put up a hangar.
So you're saying the administration should make these rules?
No, I'm saying administration should come forward to you with what the priorities are.
Okay, but who's gonna decide on the priorities?
I think it should be on the administrative side to tell you what we need to do our job, to carry out your policies.
So in other words, there again, the committees, you won't need police.
I haven't figured out all that.
You know, that's fine, I guess. My concern is. Why can't we be a part of that and know that until the final, and until,
The question is when do we bring you guys in? I don't know. You know. I don't know.
if it's too late, we're gonna wind up having a 4-day budget set in 3 days. Is that really fair to us too?
No,
To not have that input, or just, even if we're just sitting there and listening to what our committee is,
it's
not speaking.
it's a problem that we have with all of our projects. You know, it's like, I know IT wants to be involved in all of our construction projects. But basically, IT doesn't necessarily need to be involved when I'm working with the department to figure out what kind of space they need and what kind of configuration they need. You know, we gotta time their part of it properly so that we're not wasting their time, we're not wasting your time. So I don't have all the answers for you. But it's a change from the way that we have been doing it, and I think we might be headed in the right direction. I think there's gonna be bumps along the road. I'm just hoping that we can work it out so that the county is transparent. We come forward to you guys with a good list of priorities that we as administration think we need to do to do the job, and that we have input from everybody that needs to do it. How that all gets worked out, that's one of the things I think about, when I've got time to think about it. And I'm just one cog in the mechanism.
It'll never be all transparent as long as it stays up on the 4th floor, and I think that was very well shown the other night at the board meeting.
Yeah, I did not watch the board meeting.
Well, you must have heard about it, yeah.
I heard, yeah.
You could listen to the radio.
The executive mentioned, here again, this is something I really, and I don't want, if I'm getting off track here.
Role of the facilities committee.
Huh?
I think we're good. Role of the facilities committee. As long as
Okay. The executive mentioned that he didn't want the department heads intimidated by the committee heads of the board being at the meeting. Is that a problem?
Not with my committee. And I'm not privy to all the other meetings.
When you're at these meetings, you're not chiming in and interrupting, are you?
I've never been to one.
Okay, well, you've never been to one.
No, the budget, no, because when I became the chairman, that the county executive didn't want he didn't, no, I didn't get invited.
So we have never had that access.
Yes, we did
Yeah.
prior.
I've been at them. But used to have, before years ago, they used to have the chairman of the county board and the chairman of the committee and the heads of the department.
All
Used
right.
to all sit in on
Did
them. Now
you,
there's no one.
did you find yourself in argument with the executive branch when they were deliberating?
I mean, we might have put our 2 cents worth in or whatever, but no, I wouldn't say we argued.
Was that
with them.
asked for, or did you chime in?
Ask
with-
and say, did you have any other feelings or anything that you wanted or whatever,
Okay,
or anything you wanted to say? But no, as far as arguing with them, no, that wasn't our spot to be there.
so it doesn't sound like there really was an atmosphere where the department heads should have felt intimidated by the committee heads being there. So that statement that was made at the board meeting last time doesn't really hold water here.
Like Supervisor Gabbard, she said that she was there, never asked to leave or anything.
Right,
And she said that she didn't feel intimidated, that the county executive, that he didn't mind whatsoever.
okay,
So she got to sit in there. So what would happen if Andy gets down there when he would go in?
all right. That's all I had on that. I just, again, it's the transparency issue.
Mhm.
Does the public really have enough access to what their executive branch is doing? If we aren't there to observe.
Well, if he was there, I can see where they don't want all of us there, but if he was there,
Yeah.
at least he could be reported back at the committee. I mean, he is the head of our committee, so.
That's all I have.
Well, and just on that, I mean, when we did this facilities assessment, then you guys said, yep, I think that somebody from the committee should be there, and I was glad to be there and glad to listen in and glad to weigh in on some of these decision-making processes, and I did feel a little uncomfortable, before that, thinking about, oh, well, this is an RFP, it didn't go out for bid. That could be somebody's buddy that they're just handing that over to. Well, if you had one more set of eyes or ears in there that didn't have any, I shouldn't say, I did have skin in the game, but that process then played out, and I gave my opinions to Mike and said, I think this, and this, and Mike made the decision, but I was able to give my input on that, and like I said, our self-interest is a little different as committee members than it is the county executive or one of these department heads. So I thought that was, it was beneficial to have another person in there that has a different interest or view on things. So. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. Discussion and action of a county appraisal policy. Supervisor Swan, I know you have been.
Okay, I asked for this discussion at the end of the last meeting. My view is that if we're in acquisitions, we had 2 property acquisitions last year and this year. I'm wondering if requiring an appraisal prior to property acquisition or disposition might streamline the process when we're acquiring these properties. It may, the idea behind it would be to have, not that we don't want debate, in our board meetings. But it gives us more information on making these decisions. And it may also result in us being able to maximize taxpayer dollars when we're acquiring a property, not paying too much, and when we're disposing of a property, being able to set the asking prices where they should be. And that's my idea behind saying, well, if we're going to spend, in the thousands to save tens or hundreds of thousands, that makes sense to me. You talked about an administrative building being potentially an ultimate goal. And, this facility study we did comes up really with a replacement cost analysis on the buildings, but not really market value, where you know what you needed to ask if you were gonna put together a portfolio of properties for sale, for example. If you had to do that, that's a situation where it's a no-brainer really that you should have an appraisal to determine what you should ask for the properties if you were going to put them on the market. But I think individually it makes sense to, you wouldn't want the need for an appraisal to delay an acquisition or a disposition. But I think it, it gives us more information. Also, if we accept someone else's appraisal, we really, don't have, we're not the intended user in the report. So we really can't use that report as we could if we were the owner of it. So I guess I wanted to ask for input on this. I told legal that this may be coming their way, and the last, not the last board meeting, but the board meeting before. And I'm willing to put together something like this, but I'd like the input of the committee first, just to get a litmus test on whether it's something we want to consider. And then if you had any input on how it should be written.
You're the appraiser.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine. We could put together a draft. I guess my question is, do you think it's a reasonable thing to look at here?
I mean, Tom, you had this is, your expertise, and you think that the county could benefit off of having a policy on this. I guess my personal feeling is I don't think it hurts anything if you're saying, okay, well, before we sell or buy a building, we have to have, this outlined here. It has to follow this procedure. I personally don't think that's, a bad thing. I mean, I think your concerns were that we paid too much for the Harrison building. If we had a appraisal on that building, then would we have bought it? I don't know if we would have still went through with that, but I guess it would have been, everybody would have known that, okay, here's what the appraisal is. This is, we follow the policy and procedure set forth by the county.
And the point is, with that one, we accepted the report of the seller. So I didn't really even have, we didn't really have, without express consent of the appraiser and the seller, be able to use that in debate. And then most appraisal reports even, require written consent to discuss the contents of an appraisal report in public. So, that's one of the assumptions and limiting conditions in a report normally is that, this report shall not be disseminated to the public in advertising or the media. So, I just think if we have a report ourselves for the taxpayers, that's complying to a greater degree with open records. It's allowing them to see, what an independent third party thinks we should be paying for a property or what we should be selling it for. And so I thought, well, how do you feel about that, Mike? Do you think it would hold up the process?
I don't think it would hold up the process.
Okay, as long as we did it gave enough time in advance.
Yeah,
What have it completed?
what happens is, I think with the Harrison Street, I don't know how much lead time we got on when they wanted to get out,
Yeah, we didn't have much.
but I don't know how fast an appraisal can get
Well,
turned around.
These days it can get turned around pretty quickly because I can tell you from, my own experience, appraisers are looking for work.
And the thing is, we could probably go out for an RFP and get an appraiser on retainer that would be, I don't know how you price your appraisals. If it's by square footage,
No, it depends on the complexity of the property involved and.
I don't know how an appraisal firm would respond to an RFP, but what could end up happening is we go out for an RFP. We ask for a price for 1, 2, and 3 years. I don't know how they set the price, but we get them on what would be a blanket and would be basically an appraiser on call. And we've done our competitive pricing to decide on the firm. And when something comes up like this, we call them up and say, hey, we need an appraisal of this building, we need it in 2 weeks. You know, and that could even be worded into the RFP, is that we need the results of the appraisal, the report in 2 weeks.
Okay. And it would be a flat rate.
And it would be a
Yeah.
rate that was decided upon
Yeah.
based on the RFP
Okay.
with whatever kind of escalator they would want for the 3 years.
Okay.
And you'd end up, we had 4 or 5 people that applied for it. Then we'd have their RFPs, we can look at the RFPs, make a decision like we did with the facilities condition assessment. And get them on contract for 1 year with 2 additional 1-year extensions. And go with that, and then, we call them up and say, hey, we've got it.
Can't be based on any contingency.
What kind of contingency?
Yeah, it wouldn't be. It would be a flat rate.
Yeah, it'd be a flat rate, we'd have.
Upfront. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and that way we can hopefully compare apples to apples with the different appraisal firms and pick one.
Right. What I'm saying is you can't make, you can't pay an appraiser contingent on the value of it. That's not allowed.
If everybody would say that they will, I don't know how. If they would give us some basis for making a decision on who is the most economical, because like with architects, sometimes they will give us a flat rate. Sometimes they will say they will charge 5% of the construction costs, or 8% or 10%. We had one with, what project did we just go out with? Oh, with the highway shop. The lowest person on their proposals, sounded like great. It was like, oh, $23,000. But then if you really read it, $23,000 was to redo the work that we just had paid somebody to do, to come up with basically a schematic of how we wanted stuff laid off. But then they wanted 8% of the construction costs, which changed their $23,000 RFP proposal cost to $285,000.
Yeah, appraisers aren't allowed to calculate a fee based on percentages like that.
Okay,
Percentage
so,
of value.
I don't know how. If there's some way that we can find to have them submit us a cost proposal that is something that we can compare everybody with, then we can award on it. And then we can have them, they won't be on retainer, but they would be basically pre-qualified. We call them up and we say, we got an appraisal to do. Can you do it?
Could they quote an hourly rate or,
They,
that way? Or-
if they quote an hourly rate, then I would want to have what their average hourly time is, because we ran into that with the airport, or not the airport, but UW Fox's snow plowing.
Yeah,
When we put out our snow plowing, we ask for a fixed rate, or if it's, less than 2 inches of snow or more than 6 inches, how much is it gonna cost you to plow my lot? Not how much per hour, because I could go out there with a shovel and shovel your parking lot and take 100 hours to do it. And somebody comes in with a plow and then charges me more per hour or whatever, but they're done in 15 minutes. So there's gotta be some way that we can quantify what the final cost would be for us. So if they would say, an average appraisal takes 1 week, and we are going to charge this much per hour, and this is how many hours we do spend on an average appraisal, then it gives us something quantifiably to look at. Somebody who says, it's gonna take, so much to do it.
yeah, okay.
There's just gotta be some way that
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
we can quantify it and
So,
not have it open-ended.
so I will, with your blessing, I will go forward and make contact with legal and start to write a resolution on this for presentation, in a month or two. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm okay.
Sound good?
right, moving on to discussion of responsible bidders, contractors, and county role.
We're moving slowly with that. I had a meeting with my counterparts in the county, and we talked about it. And I think we've got everybody on board that once we come up with something, it will be, countywide. I know I have a webinar at noon today on construction contracting and contractors, handling contractors and things like that. So hopefully that will give me some more information. I have not been able to, review the work that Paula Vandehei sent us from City of Appleton, I think she was, with how she handled with, contractors. And I don't think Bob Daniels looked at it yet either, really. He and I are pretty much working on it together. So we're moving it forward, albeit at a snail's pace.
I guess obviously we knew there was problems with the boathouse, and I'm just gonna say this publicly that, we've been discussing this for quite some time now, and there's tools that counties have in place that they don't have to take the low bid, but that has to be on the responsibility, as we heard from Mary Ann, of Mike Elder documenting some of that stuff and putting that stuff forward. This is, again, I'm going to continue to say this is a discussion off of our department head talking about the issues that he faces as a department head and us coming up with a solution to this problem. And so it sounds like if we would have had something in place, maybe before that boathouse would have went out, maybe we wouldn't be in this position anymore. And we're going to keep banging our heads against the wall. We're going to have to come up with a solution. And that, that's what we're trying to do here. And so when I asked Mike, I said, where are we at with this? And he said, well, I can't do it right now. Well, I've said, you give me the information, and then if I have to be the one that puts it down on paper that X contractor, Y contractor are costing the taxpayers this amount of money because they're not holding up that end of their bargain, I'm not doing my job as protecting the taxpayers. We're not doing our job as committee members of protecting the taxpayers if we're going to continue to let this go on. So if you don't feel comfortable providing that information, I will do that, but you have to provide me the information. You are the one that said, this is happening. These are the contractors that are costing us money. This continues to be a problem. So if you're saying, I can't do this because of this person is telling me not to, I will do that.
You gave me the form.
Yep.
We are instituting that with the boathouse and with the child care center. And we've got paperwork following behind us, on both of them, that we will document it and then have it for future use.
And Parkview. This is really coming to fruition because of what happened at Parkview and the locks in the doors.
Oh, yes.
And that kind of stuff. And so when Mary Ann sat right there, she said, Mike, you sent emails to your county employees saying, hey, you had to be over there supervising these folks. They say in their contract that they provide a supervisor. Our role as facilities folks in the county is not supervising a construction crew. They wrote that is written into their contract, but here we are as county employees supervising these folks, and that's costing the taxpayers money. They didn't put locks in the doors. That cost the taxpayers money. Again, so that kind of stuff, like I said, we brought forth a proposal and a solution to this problem. And if I'm happy to hear that, that we're moving forward.
Actually, I have a request into IT to create that form that you gave me into they call them fillable PDFs, so that we can put it on the internet and that highways can fill it out, I can fill it out. And the boathouse, childcare center, Parkview, couple other ones that we're going to put them in there. Because with the boathouse, it's not only the general contractor, but one of the
Yeah.
sub-consultants of the, architect
Yeah,
that we don't want to do business with.
it just, talk about this in another man, you know, we are hamstrung by state statute that we have to take the low bidder, and the examples that were given where a highway building was built in Boston and they had to use a low bidder. Well, they cost the taxpayers a bunch of money. They documented it, and then the same contractor bid over in New Lisbon, and they said, well, we're not gonna use you because you know, you cost the taxpayers money over here, so by statute, we don't have to go ahead and use you, but that has to be documented, you know, so we don't get sued, so.
So I think with the boathouse, we've got some good documentation. We're gonna fill out the form. And we will use that for future. And I know I'm gonna work with Bob to fill out the same form with reasoning and everything for his highway project that went over budget significantly with the same contractor. So that we don't use them again. Now, I don't know, had we disqualified or had these problems with that contractor before we did the boathouse, he was the only bidder at the boathouse.
Right.
I don't know how.
Yep.
You know, we're gonna say, well, you're not qualified, and then all of a sudden now I can't find a contractor to do the work.
Mhm.
So I don't know, that's gonna be a bridge I'll cross after we start documenting everything.
Mhm.
But we did have another contractor who said he could do it and it was less expensive, but he couldn't get the bid in on time. When I get questions like that or answers like that, I become suspicious on, you know, why couldn't you get it in on time?
Well, I mean, this is just the exact example of, you know, this board or committee's, ability to get stuff done, and right, if we're getting blockers along the way, it's that, you know, we're not doing our job as a committee here, and we're not having the ability to do our job as a committee, and, I don't know, I mean, I put forward those ordinances that other counties have done, and that got shot down. I mean, that's, you know, to me, that's a little bit, you know, we're getting, you know, pushed aside as a committee that somebody else knows best what to do. You know, at what point do we say, forget about it, we're gonna move forward on this, you know, so it's just, it's a little frustrating, to be completely honest, so.
But, and on my side, it's a little frustrating with the amount of stuff that we've got going on right now that we can't devote enough time to all of our projects. You know, and this being one of the projects. You know, and there's a lot of projects that we got going on. To be truthful, I don't know of any other department that has as many projects going on as we. You know, to be truthful with you.
Mhm.
You know, highways might have a couple of highway projects, 2, 3 highway projects. Airport might have one hangar project. You know, Parks has one big project. You know, I've got 5.
Yeah,
3 pages, you know, well, you know, but you know, 5, like the evidence building, the Oshkosh Human Services elevators, you know, the facilities condition assessment, you know. All of these, they are very big, and I've got one big project that we need to do that has been put on the back burner for 18 months. And that is to upgrade our computerized maintenance management system, because it's basically the same one we've been using since 1998. And we need to get more modernized, and it's in the budget, but we're talking about it's a significant time consuming project for us to move from one software package to the next. And, you know, we've got to get it done, because the one that we've got is failing.
You have the help to do it?
Huh?
Do you have the help to do it?
No,
Is it in your budget?
it's the help.
Oh,
I don't know. Yeah, I've got money in there for a consultant to help me.
for that.
For that, yeah. But it's real hard for me to come to ask you for more administrative staff here when we, you know, we start becoming a top-heavy organization. So,
Facilities or
Yeah.
both?
facilities.
Oh, but you have 5 projects, you just said that, you
Yeah.
have more work.
But how long are these projects gonna last? You know, and I've been saying that for 25 years.
Yes,
So
the one was 18 months already, so.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna have a lot of work going forward, you have a lot of. This facility study gonna show there's a lot of maintenance to be done, you just said 2 to 3 million a year in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
You
But
have,
you know, but that depends on who's going to be in charge of these projects. And that's, you know, that is something that, I brought up with Mark Harris. Jane wasn't here long enough for me to really discuss it with her, I was too new. And I've been having discussions with the current county executive. It'd be a significant change on how the county does their business. And there's only so much change an organization can accommodate before it becomes totally dysfunctional. So we'll have to see, you know, I think I know which direction he wants to go, but we'll have to see how that all plays out. And then it's gonna have to be, everybody has to be on the same page. And that's a change for some of the players. So I'll see.
Slowly.
Yeah, slowly. You guys have 2 years.
All right, well, moving on to discussion on the Oshkosh Human Resources Building Elevator Controls Modernization.
Well, we had something that caught us. Not just us, but also the state. The state facilities department. A little bit by surprise. It used to be, right now our problem is we have to make some changes to the fire alarm for Oshkosh Human Services in order to finish it all off. Pretty much everything's done except the fire alarm part. And that became aware to us because the inspector came and said, well, if you change out the main panel, that's a UL listed panel, but it's not tested with these smoke heads. And that didn't just catch us flat footed, it caught the architect flat footed, and it caught, I don't know, is it DFD, Department of Facility Development with the state?
DOA, Department of Administration.
Well, they're part of DOA, but it's my counterpart at the state level. They got burned on the same thing on one of their projects. So we now have to get some things that work together with the UL testing for the panel that we got put in. And they're taking us a little bit of time to get. Which we just replaced the fire alarm system in a couple different buildings. And we had a budget item to replace the fire alarm in Parkview. But now because the inspectors are saying, well, yes, you have a UL panel, and yes, this is a UL listed smoke head, but they weren't tested by UL together. Now you have to go and buy the whole system. So, that's what we're doing. Hopefully we will have, the elevator up and operational mid-October for Oshkosh Human Services. But what's slowing us down is we got caught by the inspector.
Thank you, Mike. Moving on to discussion of building assessment study.
That is a whole elephant that we've got. Like I said, we got the report last week. And the report really, it talks about everything in a high level. But part of what they gave us is, it's called the dashboard on the computer. The dashboard on the computer has all the details. And what I basically have to do is take a look at what's in the dashboard on the computer to be able to write it into like priority list for you guys on what needs to be done and what kind of costs are there.
Could you ask McKinstry to put together maybe like I would call it a one pager to say Winnebago County Facilities Assessment. We've examined 325 buildings and we found that X, Y, Z, and then this, and this. I mean,
Yeah, I've got that.
okay, well, I mean, we, you know, I guess I I would have liked to see that, today, you said,
you will see it.
okay,
It's just, I want, because if you see that, I know you're gonna have more questions,
Sure.
and I want to give you a more complete picture of it. The one thing I can say is, they, like I said earlier, hangar number 7 is one of the primary buildings that they talked about. The airport fire station is another building that we own, that is, in very critical need of it. I haven't digested all the rest of it to tell you all the different buildings in order of what they've got. But I did tell you, they did come up and say, 10 years from now, the jail's gonna be an expensive building for us. 15 years from now, Parkview's gonna be an expensive building for us. And that's going to lead to some discussions of how are we using these buildings? And what should we do with them? Because like hangar 7, if we're gonna have to spend $100,000 to fix windows in the roof and the masonry on it and interior finishes, because they're all deteriorating because they didn't heat it or something. We need to say, okay, this building's not it.
Demolition.
We're gonna demolish it, turn it back to grass, and you can rent one of the hangars that we just built. The fire station is gonna have to be discussions with the city. I know we've had some very high level discussions. They need a firehouse in that area. So how much are they willing to pony up to help offset the cost of the building? So some of those things, I haven't been able to digest all of it yet to be able to speak intelligently with you on it. And reading the report, I had questions about it that I got to get into the dashboard to help explain what they wrote. But I did ask for,
they have a brief summary of, layman's terms for the rest of the,
it's really brief.
for folks to say, okay,
Yeah.
this is what we found, right? Get into further detail.
And I held off on giving it to you because I've only had it for 5 days. I've read it once.
Mhm.
I saw the dashboard. I've got questions. And I know if I give it to you, you're gonna ask me questions. I'm gonna be
Not
stupid.
gonna
I won't be able to answer them.
I mean, could we have McKinstry come in here for the next facilities meeting?
Yeah, I think I've asked him to do that.
Mhm.
And I think we can do it for the next one. But I have another follow-up meeting with him on Friday. So we'll see if we can finalize it, if that's okay with you guys. I'll see if I can get them to come in and present it to us. But it might be, I can probably present, or maybe they can do it by Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, that I don't know how the rest of the committee feels. I think I would feel comfortable, and I think it would be appropriate since we paid $300,000 for this assessment, that we hear that from their opinion, not, not filtered through you, just,
Yeah,
That's more work for you too.
well, yeah.
yeah, let them do it. That's what we, $300,000 for.
The one thing I can say is, it didn't come out looking as bad as I thought it would. I was expecting, like $5 to $10 million right off the bat, and we're not at that point. So
You haven't read it all yet, though.
Yeah.
I looked at the graph of their projections, and it's like, it didn't look that bad, and, I was expecting, some more significant stuff. And really, some of the buildings that are really in worse shape are like a park shelter, That's, it's $15,000 to build a new park shelter.
Mhm.
It's not the major stuff. The major stuff is more further down the road. So basically, I've done the job of keeping us from having catastrophic failures right away. But there are some things that are pricey, like the roof for Nina Human Services, the boilers for these buildings. And then really the condition assessment reports, is kind of asking the question, or begging the question, what do we need for space? What do we need for us to do our business? So, the next step is going to be coming up with a capital plan on how to do these things. But then we also have to say, you know, is it worthwhile to do this capital project if we don't really need to do this program, or if we really don't need to have all this space? You know, how many people do we have working from home yet, or doing hybrid, where instead of 3 people having an office, we have 1 office and 3 people share it.
Well,
Or they come in.
that's where I was gonna go to with that, is doing a space assessment, which it sounds like they did, but no doubt that that's happening throughout the county, and
Yeah.
is it working? Okay, we had 10 offices in Health and Human Services, only 5 of them are being used. Is that, you know, something that, okay, well, a couple buildings could be consolidated, right? Because it's not
Right.
being used.
And that's a discussion I've had with the county executive, and he feels the same way. The only caution I told him was I've done like 3 space studies for the county over my tenure here, and never once have we cut space.
Well, we just went
You
through a
know.
worldwide pandemic that we had to
Yeah.
do some things and had to force some change, and
And he wants to do another one.
Well, we've only really looked at the buildings that my department was
this went
responsible
countywide.
for, but it really never looked at like, you know, the sheriff's department, or, you know, airport with their staffing and their maintenance work, or parks. You know, it's more so like human services building and the courthouse. And it was done in conjunction with how are we going to secure the courthouse, or some of those other things. You know, so a lot of water's gone under the bridge. Like Andy said, we've had the pandemic. There's a lot of people that have worked from home, you know, and we still have some departments that feel that everybody needs a private office, even though they're spending 40% or 50% or more working from home, or working in the field, or, you know, what have you. You know, I think, and I'm pretty sure the county executive supports me on this, some of the departments are gonna have to take a serious look at how they're doing things, so that we don't remodel space or increase space and we're not gaining anything from it. We're not gaining any efficiency. So that'll be the next step, but your next meeting, we'll have a presentation on the
From
condition
Kent
assessment,
Street.
and I will ask them if they can attend via Zoom.
Is he looking at his own space?
I have not been told that any spaces were off limits.
I said, is he looking at his own space for?
Yeah. I think so. I think so. You know, and it's one of the things I do have to say is that the county's operated the way it has for the 25 years I've been here. Nobody's really looked at how we do things. And, you know, one of the good changes that the county executive had was making veterans co-locate with Oshkosh Human Services here. And, you know, both departments now are saying, you know, this was a good idea, because the veteran goes there, and if the VA can't provide him something, he just goes right across the hall and he's got human services. And that's the breaking down of the silos. So, you know, I think that's been a very good thing. I'm not everybody has bought into it yet. You know, and it's just like highways and us, we're working closer together now. You know, it used to be, they wouldn't even let us look at their HVAC stuff. We've had some changes in management out there, and now we're a team. You know, we work at it and we take care of stuff, and they look at our stuff. So it's,
I think that, I mean, I don't know, it should come from this committee, but that maybe it has to come from somewhere else, but I mean, it's pretty foolish to be doing work and going with different vendors and different stuff. That's just insane to me that, you know,
Yeah.
we've talked about it, you know, since I've been on this committee where, you know, maybe we need to look at a county-wide policy where, you know, facilities oversees all the buildings of the county. It's.
well, that's not to jump on your bandwagon, but that has been, Bernie Egan came forward and said that, I don't know how many years ago. You know, and Mark Harris that was just not one thing he wanted to take on as a challenge. This county executive, I think, is looking at that and is willing to take it on as a challenge, but he's got a lot of challenges right now in front of him. So, that's a change that I think he's slowly moving us towards. Um, but I don't know I don't know everything that's going on in his thought process. He may be thinking about having a Department of Public Works. Most counties our size usually has a Department of Public Works. And that would probably benefit a lot with it. But it's like, well, who's gonna be in the Department of Public Works?
Mhm.
And that's different from the different counties that I've looked at. So it's a lot of change, and I don't know that the organization on my side of the house is comfortable with that big a change.
All right, well, thank you, Mike, for that. Looking forward to seeing that next month. Moving on to the discussion of the 980 housing project.
It's moving along. We got the work on the footings right now. We've got the new holding tank in. We do have one of the individuals is set to be released. So we have another, we'll have a vacancy in the trailer for somebody coming out. But we're looking at having that done by the end of the year. If not sooner, if we can get it done sooner.
Cool.
So one is coming out of the trailer and another one's going right in.
That's what it looks like it's gonna be. Yeah, we've been, there's an individual that's been ready to come out for the last 9 months to 12 months. But the judge has been holding him at Sandridge pending how we're doing on this. But now that we have a vacancy in the trailer, he'll be able to come out soon.
Do you have to do any remodeling or anything in there?
I just got an email from Mary Ann saying, well, you gotta go in there and check and make sure it's ready for everybody, and I guess we'll go take a look.
Where you're obligated to do that by the state.
Yeah. So we'll go take a look. I know they had a pile of furnishings outside the trailer to be disposed of, and that's supposed to be going away today. So I don't know if they've trashed furniture. I gotta take a look at the lease. I know we put furniture to begin with, but I think if they damaged anything, they are supposed to pay to replace it. So hopefully the state's management firm is taking care of that. But we did have a change in management firm here, a couple months ago.
Moving on to discussion on boathouse project.
Well, you probably heard what John said. I cannot get Bradke's to admit that they didn't build it according to the design. And then they went behind the normal procedures and was dealing directly with the structural engineer who came up with a plan to mitigate what they did wrong. So it's not a design that I'm exactly happy with, but it's not wrong either, and we're talking about a boathouse. If this was a new office building or something, I'd make a bigger stink about it. But to get them to do it the way it was supposed to be done, we would still not have the boathouse this fall. It'd be another year waiting, and who knows, we might have even had to take them to court. So it's a design solution that we can live with. But as I said earlier, we are documenting it, and hopefully it will be grounds for, if we ever have to use them again, that we'll be able to disqualify them. We are also looking at the sub-consultant for the architect. The architect is already committed to me that they'll never work with them again. I've let several of the other architects that we work with that don't even submit a proposal with this architectural or this engineering firm with us, and they said, thank you for the heads up. But it's a rather large engineering firm in the location in our area. So it's the whole process is just very frustrating. And it basically came down to a contractor saying, this is the way we always do it. And it's like, doesn't matter if that's the way you did it, that's not the way it was designed.
Can you summarize what happened, what the design was, and what they didn't do, and what the solution?
Here, I can show real quick. What they did was, we have the pilings. And we have the pilings on the outside of the building. And then you have the pier with the deck boards, right?
Yeah,
So the deck boards were supposed to come up and meet with the pilings, and there was supposed to be a C channel that went over the top of it that the building was connected to.
what's the C channel, what exactly?
It's a piece of steel that's in the form of a C.
Okay, got it,
It's like a steel cap.
okay.
They
Built the decking around this.
they built the decking. They built the decking and the decking went clear across.
I saw that, yeah.
So now I've got a steel building sitting on top of the deck boards that, should I ever have to replace a deck board, the building's sitting on top of it. So we'll end up having to cut the board here and then put cribbing underneath so that we can attach a new deck board. They're rather large deck boards, they're like 1x6s. So the chances of us ever having to do it is minimal, but it's beside the point, that's not the way it was designed.
Mhm.
Trimming underneath meaning what, a support board along the post?
Yeah, you
So
have,
like a joist along the
Yep.
post so you can attach.
so I can anchor in that end.
Through into it.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. I know, I've been out there and looked at it. I see.
You know, and that's,
Tom?
So that's not worthwhile to take them to court for?
how long do we want? No, we're gonna spend thousands of dollars going to court.
What is the repair cost? You know, the cost involved in redoing it.
Oh, probably a significant amount, because they're gonna have their labor, they're gonna have to cut it back, they're gonna have to put the cribbing underneath. And do it, and,
That's why I really I ask is, you know, if it doesn't cost that much.
oh,
it's
it
worth going to court on.
probably be $10,000-$20,000 to them in cost.
And they refused to
To acknowledge the fact. that
acknowledge
they
the
did.
fact that they did it wrong. They got the engineer to sign off what they did was
Yeah.
right, and now we're kind of just,
And because the engineer is basically an agent of the county, we, in effect, gave them permission to do it. So is it a big problem? No. You know, and when I went down there discussing with the county executive, it's like, how big of a jerk do you want me to be? Because we could go to court, it's gonna delay it, we won't have a boathouse till next
sure.
spring.
Yeah.
You know, and it's in the grand scheme of things, is it terrible? No, it's just not what we wanted.
Sure.
Can I ask one more thing? When you build the boathouse over the top of that, where do you attach the posts from the boathouse to the?
It would be, they're gonna have instead of having a C channel, they're gonna have a flat piece of steel go there. And then they'll weld to that.
You
rather
can't
than-
put a C channel in now that it's.
No, because the wood's in the way.
Okay, but when you cut it back, could you put the C channel in while you're in the construction process of redoing it?
Yeah, and they basically said, no, we're not gonna do it, and it would be, I either go for the performance bond and kick them off the job.
Yeah,
And the one and only time I used a performance bond, it took me a year to get the insurance company to pay for it. Or we go and we spend thousands of dollars of time going into court to try and force me to do it, and it's an aggravation rather than a problem.
so it's a flat piece of steel over the top without
Without the two.
without being
stuff.
bolted, how do you bolt it onto the?
It comes through the top, right into the pilings.
Okay, and then how do you attach the post from the boathouse?
They weld, they'll weld.
You
the
weld it
bracket.
as a steel?
Yeah, they'll weld a steel bracket to the steel plate.
I see.
And like I said, it's
That's
more of an
okay.
aggravation, it's more of a frustration that they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
And
And is it, in the grand scheme of things, is it a prudent use of taxpayers' money to take them to court to prove a point?
Yeah, that's it.
no, and I mean, the point is that when we have to replace the deck boards, it's gonna be an extra cost. Right? Yeah,
How much is it gonna cost?
Yeah.
I don't know how much. You know, it's pressure treated 1x6s.
Yeah.
They'll probably last 25, 30 years,
Yeah.
probably longer than the steel building.
Yeah.
It's just a big frustration.
So, yeah. Can Cardinal do the work instead of Radke then?
Cardinal is doing the work for the building and everything that Radke's responsible for is done.
So he'll do the flat plate too,
Yep.
Cardinal,
Yep.
and he'll rebuild the decking or put the joist in along the,
No,
we'll do that.
we will when,
County?
if we ever have to replace the deck board.
But how are you're gonna cut it though? And put
We
that
would have to
joist-
cut along the pilings
Yeah,
and probably take out, if one deck board got cracked, we'll probably have to take out at least 2 more to have enough room on either side to do it. So it's kind of like when you're trying to fix a big hole in drywall between your
Studs.
studs. You know, sometimes you have to put a backer piece there so you can screw the drywall into it. That's basically what we've got to do here.
okay.
So, you know, I'm gonna say, as long as we've had the other boathouse, we haven't had to replace a deck board. But my whole argument was, you didn't do it the way you were paid to do it. You know, I want it the way it was designed. They won't admit fault, they won't redo it. And I don't think it's a prudent use of taxpayers' dollars to try and take them to court.
Sure.
And
Not over 10 or 20 grand.
Are you holding some of the money? Think it wasn't done right? Is that-
You know, 'cause the amount of money we probably get back would be peanuts. Cause,
You don't pay them, you have all that,
yeah,
and they have to take you to court.
Yeah,
I'll talk to the architects and see how much that would be. But we'd still come back to one of our sub-agents gave them approval to do it.
yeah,
So,
there you go.
you know, we got screwed, and that engineering firm, as long as I'm here, won't be doing work for us again.
All right. There you go. Moving on to director report, department operations.
You've already discussed most of them, right?
Yeah.
Most of them.
UWO is the only thing that we haven't discussed. Major, so I see.
The UWO projects are still being held up. I know Outagamie County is very reluctant to put any money towards the redoing of the student center until we have a revised MOU or some other kind of
Yeah, it's not gonna happen until that's done.
confirmation that we're not gonna lose their support for it. The fume hoods, they're still working on getting stuff fixed, and both Paul Farrell and I feel that if they would test them the way they were supposed to be tested, I don't think we're gonna have a problem with the fume hoods. Now, I believe they tested them with the glass fronts wide open, and there wasn't sufficient flow. And everywhere I've looked, testing a fume hoods, they're either 6 inches up or 12 inches up. So I think that's not gonna be a problem. Their science wing windows, they just woke up to the fact that they had that project approved. So they're working on putting out an RFP for the design work to do that. And
I told Martin they had everything approved except the kitchen project after
Yeah.
we did that.
the child care center, we are still waiting for one plant from the general contractor before we pay them. And that should be all done. You know,
What about the roof over the library?
oh, they still haven't dealt with that. Both Paul Farrell and I don't believe it's a roof problem, it's probably a wall problem.
Yeah.
Or a flashing problem.
Yeah.
We had a freebie visit from one of the roof consultants that we've used, who thinks it's a flashing or a roof problem, not a flashing or a wall problem,
Right.
and not a roof problem, and they're not going forward with it at all. And that's really, you know, that becomes a crux of the matter, with this MOU is who's paying for what? You know, because basically, you know, we tell them we need to do more investigative work. They don't have money in the budget for the professionals to come in to look. So they want to push it back on the county. And part of it too is, you know, when they have to contract out services because they don't have staff. My contention is that the county should not be paying the labor for their contractors because the MOU says they're supposed to have staff on board and pay for their labor. So, you know, we'll pay for the parts if they have to call in somebody to do the work, but they should have people on hand to do that. So the labor of the contractor should be there, but
That's a building maintenance issue, which is real estate, though. Wouldn't we be responsible for taking care
the
of it?
way the MOU is written is that they are supposed to have people on staff to take care of the physical plant.
Okay.
We pay for parts and services, certain services, when it gets over $7,000 per year.
Right.
But if they don't have, let's say they're supposed to have custodians on and pay the labor for the custodians. If they contract out that service, then they send us the invoice.
Right.
And I'm saying, no, you're supposed to pay for the labor for that. Just because you don't have somebody on hand, we should not be picking up the cost that you contract out the service. Because then there's no incentive for them to restaff their building if we're gonna be paying for all of those costs.
Yeah.
But the negotiations for that has stalled.
Hmm.
And we had one meeting, between Allegheny County and Winnebago County. We had some good stuff. Corporate counsel from Allegheny County was gonna draw it up, and I believe they submitted it to UWO, and they refused to, proceed on it. So, I don't know what's gonna end up happening. And I do know, you know, you're all seeing the news, how far in the hole they are. I don't know what that's gonna do to their staffing. I think it put in the news that they're looking at, you know, over 200 people leaving their staff there, and they've excluded the educational staff from that. So I don't know where they're gonna make up the cutting in staff from it. And we should be finding out here soon, you know, how they're going to do it.
Any updates on your budget? We kind of discussed that.
What I told you earlier, I came up, my proposed budget was keeping the funding for everything that we've done level as last year, with the exception of wages and utilities. So if it stays the way I submitted, you might see like a 5 to 7% increase in our levy, but that's due to projected increases in utilities and the wages from the wage study. So, you know, everything else, our maintenance costs, our budget for, you know, contracted services and everything like that are gonna be the same. I do have a commitment from highways. They're gonna plow our parking lots this year. So we, that will come down a little bit, because highways was a fraction of the cost of contracting it out for plowing. At the time of the budget, we were still short 4 people, so we've kept the shoveling of the sidewalks, a contracted service, but that one was more reasonable than, the plowing. The plowing was huge. And we'll have to see what those costs are now with just doing the sidewalks, and does that, do they do it cheaper than what I do by paying our people overtime? You know, and if it's cheaper for us to contract it out than paying overtime, that might be something that we want to consider doing continually in the future.
Well, yeah, I mean, big picture, you know, there's the folks that think that, you know, we should eliminate as many county employees as possible and contract everything out. Well, if it costs more to the taxpayer to, the snow needs to get plowed, the sidewalks need to get shoveled, right? You're gonna need to continue these services, whether it's somebody contract out or a county employee. And, you know, we've had this discussion many different times about, you know, who does a better job, how much does it cost, that kind of stuff like that. And I hope that we're, you know, considering that and discussing that, because, you know, you say, well, we don't have the people, I don't have the people. Well, if you could hire 2 more people and then they would take care of the snow plowing as well, and we're not contracting out and paying more to a company, that's better use of our taxpayer dollars. Let's see it on paper. Is it or isn't it? But
Yeah.
there's definitely some people that don't want county employees. They would contract out everything that they could, but it doesn't cost the taxpayers. It doesn't save the taxpayers any money.
Yeah. We have had in the past, some of our people doing the snow removal get injured. So then we end up having the workman's comp claims that, you know, I think one of our guys, I think we paid out close to $100,000
Mhm.
for it. So, you know, if you take that into account, if we contracted, we don't have the workman's comp. So, you know, we do take a look at what we can do in-house.
Yeah.
And, what we contract out, and if it makes sense,
Mhm.
then we'll contract it out. If not, then we try to keep it in-house.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mike. Suggestions for items for the next meeting agenda.
Thing that Supervisor Bender brought up, possibly naming these rooms
Yep.
or whatever, so just after. I don't know, I'm gonna say office or whatever personnel, possibly workers or whatever.
I would like to maybe expand on that and, the unfortunate accident of the highway department gentleman, last month. You know, I don't know, so I don't know. Work with Supervisor Binder on that, but obviously we're gonna need to have an ordinance drawn up before we come to the meeting next month on this.
You'll have to bring it in as a resolution.
I'll have to bring it in as a resolution.
But, you know, I think, you know, if you want, I can probably forward the policy to Steve or Bob and say, you know, it needs to start at your department and decide what you want to do. Follow this policy and then, you know. we'll
That's
go
what
from
we,
there.
that's our policy that we,
Right, that's the
Yep.
policy, it isn't up to them unless they're gonna write a whole new policy for
Mhm.
these areas, that's the
Mhm.
policy of, naming of the building.
yep.
We passed it.
Yeah, you
We
guys
passed it.
on board passed it, everybody
Yep.
passed it, yeah.
So, and I'm not sure, but Supervisor Bender, I don't think he named the ones that got killed this last time, I think it was someone else that he had brought up.
No, he did bring up somebody else. I'm bringing
Right,
it. Yeah, I'm bringing this up and I didn't do any more research or talk to anybody else. I think I mentioned at the county board level that just as somebody in passing, that maybe that would be something good to do. I mean, there's 2 boardrooms, he said there. I mean, that one hesitation I have is that are we gonna keep the highways facility or the building out there? But I'm all in favor of doing something like this, like that. Please support what he said. So.
I can give a progress report on the resolution for the appraisal. I'll try to go on that.
Okay, yeah, I've got 8, 9, 11, 12, 13. Anybody else? Jim, usually you're Johnny on the spot. Yeah.
I was not.
Yeah.
Track of it.
Things
Things on the USDA, looks like they're
we're good
coming
there.
along there.
Okay,
The budget's gonna be a big one.
all right.
Yeah. I'll add in there, you know, I should have the facilities portion of the county executive's budget come to you that I can share with you guys.
A presentation, yeah,
That would be great.
Presentation.
Definitely put that.
yeah, presentation from McKinn Street.
Yep.
That should be on there. All right, then we're looking at the next meeting date and time, 10/25/2023 at 9 AM right here on Map Street. And with that, I would take
The budget start?
the 31st,
Oh, yeah.
Halloween,
Yeah,
Monday
you're right.
night.
Yeah.
Supposed to take my kids trick or treating, but I'm not going to. All right, well, with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned.